how much they get paid per hour or per day to determine the cost, and enter the amount in the appropriate box. You should continue this process until all your categories are filled. As far as equipment is concerned, you can rent production facilities and equipment, so you do not have to necessarily buy them. For including in your budget, you must contact rental production facilities and companies and receive their rates and charges. Materials usually include computer disks, videotape, and other production-related items such as paint and masking tape, and services relates to the cost of travel, lodging, food, and other incidentals as such. Once the project has been approved and a letter of agreement is signed, it is time to get started. There is always a temptation on your part and on the part of your client to start the production phase without a contract or a letter of agreement. I have found in my media production career a troubling situation. It is better to wait for a signed contract or a letter of agreement before pre-production begins. As in the budget, the process of creating a multimedia title can be divided into pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production usually involves developing a time chart and instructional design for the project. A time chart is a matrix of activities with the dates at which time those activities must start and conclude. As you can see on your screen, a time chart can be and should be very detailed. The instructional design process begins with defining the learning objectives that you expect your audience to attain after having used the multimedia program. These objectives are for the learners and not for the producers of the program. For example, the audience will be able to distinguish a CD-ROM from other types of storage media pictured on the screen, or the learner will be able to name 3 popular multimedia authoring tools. Once the needs assessment and definition of objectives are completed, the process of instructional analysis begins. Instructional analysis takes place at a macro level and a macro level. At the macro level, the multimedia producer and the instructional designer decide on particular segments of content and information to include in the program, and decide on the overall learning strategy to present the content. The product of the macro level design is a project map. A project map is usually produced with a flowchart software. Its purpose is to provide information about the breadth and the depth of a project at a glance. The breadth and depth of a project refers to how many branches a program will have and how many screens will be produced in each branch. Furthermore, the project map shows the relationship among the branches and screens. There are several structures that have proven effective in designing project maps. A major feature of multimedia is its interactivity. In other words, the user can control the flow of information by clicking on graphics or words, go to another screen, or make certain things happen, such as starting a video segment to play. Interactivity is usually achieved by linking one media material or media object to another object. These links that determine the extent of the interactivity of a multimedia presentation should also be indicated in the project map by drawing lines between linked screens. By the way, when words and other text strings are linked, a multimedia program, they create hypertext. And when media objects such as graphics are linked, they make hypermedia. Once content decisions have been made and the instructional strategy has been selected, the process of micro-design begins. Micro-design refers to all the decisions that relates to overall screen design, selection of functional areas for buttons, text, graphics, video and audio, font selection and text density on the screen, music, special effects and narration, animation, and video segments to be shot for the program. The product of micro design is a storyboard. Storyboards show a typical screen for each branch of the program. It is important to create a storyboard before production begins so that there would be no surprises as far as size, color, or other attributes of the media elements are concerned. Among the principles of micro design are simplicity and consistency. Keeping the same simple and consistent screen design throughout a project will allow the future user to concentrate on the content of the multimedia project and do not spend time and mental effort in figuring out where the buttons are or search for text information on the screen. Although such scanning and searching takes a fraction of a second by the user, it is distracting and eventually takes its toll by delaying information processing, causing fatigue, or decreasing motivation on the part of the learner. On the other hand, simple and consistent design is aesthetically pleasing. It adds to the visual appeal of the program and therefore is motivating. When the screen is well designed, less time and mental effort is spent on information processing that is not related to the content of the project. After all, the purpose of good design is to make the content easier to learn. Very often in media production, we tend to use media effects for their own sake and forget the real purpose of these effects. They are there to facilitate communication of the content and not get in the way of information processing by the learner. Production begins when the instructional design process is completed. As you can see, there are a lot of steps before actual multimedia production begins. Spending more time and effort in pre-production planning results in smoother and less expensive production. A well-planned project with good project maps and storyboards also reduce the amount of misunderstanding and confusion among the different professionals who work on a project together. Project maps and storyboards are used by the programmer, writer, graphic artists, videographer, and other production staff such as the audio producer to create different segments of the program. The more detail is included in the instructional design documents, the more efficient the production can proceed. Production is a lot of hard work and is usually time-consuming, but it is also fun and interesting. Besides, you get to work with new and exciting technologies. Good pre-production planning brings coordination and efficiency to production and makes it more fun. Production involves the actual creation of media materials you need to include in your program. This is the phase in which graphic artists create the visual images, photographers and videographers shoot the necessary visuals, and programmers write computer codes so the program would work as it was intended in the pre-production documents. Once all the media elements are ready, the project manager, along with the instructional designer and the producer, assemble the project according to the project map and the storyboard using an authoring tool such as Macromedia Director. An important phase in production is formative evaluation. It refers to taking the media materials to the intended audience of a program and receiving feedback from them. This formative data can be very useful in making modifications to the text, graphics, videos, and audio segments early on. The sooner problems are realized, they can be fixed with less complication and expense. Problems can be as simple as the size of a font on a screen. For example, if the intended user did not find the text on the screen legible, then it should be made larger. Ideally, formative evaluation data should be collected on all aspects of project's design and materials. This may seem time-consuming and expensive, but it saves time and expense further into the production and makes your multimedia project much more effective. Once revisions to the program are made according to the formative evaluation data and feedback from your client, a final version of the program is produced for mass production, and the project can move to its post-production phase. Post-production involves mass production of the program, marketing and distribution, and summative evaluation. Mass production simply means reproducing the final version of the program on a CD or another medium of mass distribution. This is something that is not usually done in-house. The final version of the program is usually taken to a company that stamps compact discs. They reproduce the program in the quantity needed, enclose it in a jewel box, and add the cover to it. Marketing and distribution department then take over the process. When the product reaches the market and its intended audience, you will see the results of your hard work. If the results of original market research or needs assessment have been correct in assessing the real need of the audience for your project, it should sell with ease in the market. In fact, sales results can be the best indicator for the success of your program. However, if you want assessment data about the effectiveness of the program beyond sales results, you would be conducting a summative evaluation. In summative evaluation, data is collected on the effectiveness of the product in relation to its learning and training objectives. Usually, a questionnaire is sent to the users of the program, and they are asked to rate the product on its various aspects. In summative evaluation, you can collect data on simple indicators such as how frequently the program is used by its intended audience, to more complex indicators such as if the users are learning the instruction and are able to pass the tests for each module. Results of summative evaluation is useful for creating the next version of the program when an upgrade is needed or change in the content, or it can be useful in creating the next project. Evaluation is a highly technical and sensitive matter. You should rely on the services of a professional evaluator for collecting and interpreting the data. Besides the knowledge of statistics, evaluators know how to design questionnaires and ask the right questions to capture the data you need. In addition, summative evaluation is political in the sense that respondents may guess how its results are going to be used or who would benefit from the results and not cooperate in data collection or even give out inaccurate information. Professional evaluators know how to overcome these obstacles to provide clients with useful results. To summarize the entire process of multimedia production, we divided the task into 3 phases of pre-production planning, production, and post-production. The products of pre-production planning is a time chart as well as instructional design documents in the form of a project map and a storyboard. In the production phase, all necessary media elements are produced and assembled, and the project is subjected to summative evaluation. In the post-production phase, marketing and distribution takes place, and summative evaluation data are collected. Multimedia is bound to have a profound impact on how we communicate and learn. As computers are becoming less expensive and the Internet is made available to homes, schools, and places of work, customized interactive multimedia programs will be made available to all. But this medium can be used for self-expression as well. Hundreds of interactive multimedia sites have been created on the web by people for fun or presenting their personal histories or exchanging recipes. The potential for customized multimedia materials, therefore, runs the risk of creating a social future in which people no longer have a common interest, since they only receive information about their own particular narrow field of specialization. On the other hand, those who take the time to become computer literate and work with the awesome power of multimedia on the Internet will become part of a larger electronic community that transcend their neighborhood and includes people from the global village. As executives in the private and the public sector consider the use of multimedia in their organizations, they should be mindful of the social consequences of this new medium. Like other tools, it may be put to good use and can be used to bring more education and training to the home, school, or the workplace. But we cannot abuse them. We must be careful to develop and abide by our quality standards and to consider the educational effectiveness of these tools. It also has the potential of fragmenting and polarizing the society or the workplace between those who have access and work with technology and those who choose not to work with it. The proof is in good design. These new media are only a few years old. We should realize that we are inventing their use as we go along. You need to discuss the proper applications of this and other new technologies within the context of your organizations and decide how and to what extent you wish to use them. Also, keep in mind that application of any technology in your organization will have some unintended consequences. By definition, these consequences that are often unwanted and undesired cannot be predicted in advance. That's what makes both formative and summative evaluation an integral part of any technology initiative. Careful monitoring of the effects of new technologies in organizations is needed to detect any undesirable consequences immediately and remedy them. Examples of these secondary effects of technology are numerous. For example, computers were supposed to usher in a new era of the paperless society and the paperless office. However, I think we produce more printed materials on paper with the aid of the computer than when we did not have them. There is no one at fault here, but with realization within an organization, certain measures can be taken to reduce the amount of paper. New technologies, such as multimedia, are evolving and changing every day. Unlike technologies of the past, their applications and even their futures and structures are yet to be determined. This calls for careful and steady monitoring of their applications in your organization and establishing policies and procedures for their use that fits your mission, tasks, and objectives.
Thank you, Dr. Saba. Let us begin the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which now appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question, is from the Universidad Tecnológica de Nezahualcóyotl in Mexico. Welcome. Your question, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Could you speak about the applications, the multimedia applications that are specific to any type of business?
To any type of business?
Yeah, I would think probably the most common one that we're seeing would be the Office package from the Microsoft Corporation. It's fully integrated. You have your text processing, your spreadsheet, your PowerPoint, and that's pretty much of a standard today.
We have a question now from Chilpancingo from the Instituto Tecnológico. Welcome. Your question, please.
¿Cuál es su pregunta? Yes, good morning. Congratulations. First of all, we're greeting you here from Chilpancingo, Guerrero, Mexico, and this is the question. Where, in terms of purchasing habits, will we be taken by using multimedia and the Internet?
Where will purchasing habits take us in these uses?
Okay. I think we've talked about being able to purchase off the Internet. At this point in time, it's still in its infancy right now. The main requirement is to have good security. But the direction is that way, and it will continue. And possibly by the year 2000, we'll be seeing more and more purchasing over the Internet.
Okay, we have a question from Brazil now, from our colleagues who will be speaking in English from the Serviço Nacional in Porto Alegre. Welcome. Your question, please.
Yes. How will the digital TV be included in the context of the multimedia?
Excuse me, how will what be included? Did you hear the question?
No, we didn't hear the critical word.
Yes, how will what be included in multimedia? If we could have the question repeated. No. We may have lost it. I think we had some technical difficulties on the line. Okay, we now go to Mexico, to the Escuela Superior de Turismo in Mexico City. Welcome. Your question, please.
Bueno.
Bueno.
Good morning. We're calling from the Educación Continua Instituto Politécnico. We have this question. For the production of instructional software, what is the methodology that you recommend for structuring the content, speaking specifically of mapping? You suggested some bibliography. Could you specify in which one of these sources this methodology is outlined? And then another question, how much the theory of interface the design can be applied to multimedia design?
Okay.
I'm looking at the bibliography to be as specific as possible in terms of designing for interactivity. There is a citation from Christoph and Satrin. The title of the book is Interactivity by Design, Creating and Communicating with New Media. And that is the publication that I suggest you study for mapping information and making your presentations as interactive as possible. As far as the second part of the question is concerned, I think that interface design is very much part of multimedia development, and the more you spend time in interface design, the more you can make navigation, information processing easier for your users.
We have a question now from the Universidad La Salle in Mexico. Welcome. Your question, please.
The speaker has been very clear as to the need to integrate. But how can we integrate the human element? Because that is also a multimedia element. How can you start?
I'm glad you brought up that very, very important issue. Multimedia right now is as much as a live interactive medium as something that you put on a CD-ROM or a DVD. There are synchronous and asynchronous multimedia capabilities available, and definitely you need to use interactivity not with another piece of equipment or software, but interactivity among people as well.
We have a question now from Ecuador, from the Universidad Espíritu Santo in Guayaquil, Ecuador. Welcome. Your question, please.
Yes, good morning. Our question is, what is the proposed time and effort recommended for the design phase?
Okay.
In most industries, the design phase normally takes about 3 to 4 months out of the 9 months that it takes to develop and present a multimedia production. So the more time you spend on the design phase, the less difficulty you're going to encounter during the production effort. And so I would say about 3 to 4 months in a 9-month period.
We have a question from Córdoba, Argentina, Instituto de Universidad de Empresa at the Universidad Blas Pascal. Welcome. Your question, please.
Good afternoon. Sí, por favor. In initial productions, can we have probable time estimates for pre-production, production, and post-production?
Okay, well, that's pretty much in relation to the previous question. Pre-production and instructional design are almost the same phase, so I would say 3 to 4 months for pre-production, 2 or 3 months for production, and then whatever is left of the time you would spend on evaluation and field testing and making sure that your project actually works in the field.
Okay. We have a question from Mexico again, Universidad La Salle in Pachuco, Hidalgo. Welcome. Your question, please.
This is our question. Why do you say that a multimedia network has intimacy when we're talking about being interconnected?
Intimacy.
Media technologies are intimate media. This medium of television provides some intimacy in terms that you're speaking to viewers and listeners many thousands of miles away, and so that creates a sense of togetherness that otherwise we wouldn't have.
We have a question from Cuba, from our new participants from the Senya Internet in Cuba. Welcome. Your question.
What is the percentage that companies are devoting to the information technologies on average?
That's an excellent question. I'd say in the domestic U.S. you're looking at 10% in terms of a capital budget, and it's an increasing function as companies become more and more dependent on technology. The information technology budget is increasing over time.
We have a question now from Veracruz, from the Instituto Tecnológico de Veracruz. Welcome. Your question, please.
Good morning. Our question is, what are the ramifications that you see that the high cost of multimedia productions can have in the educational institutions in Latin America?
Okay, well, if Latin America is like any other institution of education, I'm sure you may find multimedia production expensive. And so therefore we need to think about multimedia production in multiple years over a period of time where as many students as possible would be exposed to the program and amortize the cost over a time period. This is something that we are learning here in the United States as well, how to apply and modify business models into educational settings. This is a new experience for everybody.
And we have a question from the Universidad Tecnológica de Coahuila in Mexico. Welcome. Your question, please.
Good morning. Our question is, what is the reason for using the 17-inch monitor